Welcome to the Survivor's Chair podcast, a podcast where we break down our stories and our trauma, understanding how they have impacted our career and our life. This is a place where we break free from shame, own our truth, and step into our power, one story at a time. Hi, I'm Kim, an adoptee, a former foster youth, hairstylist, salon owner, breast cancer, and complex trauma survivor. So join us, pull up a chair in this no sugarcoating, no holding back, honest conversation about healing and success. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Survivor's Chair podcast, episode 19. I am with my friend, my very dear friend, Rob Hinds, the founder and CEO of Raise Your Lid Consulting. And like many of us, Rob has a very powerful story. It's a story of overcoming bullying, low self-worth, people-pleasing, and a traumatic brain injury. Rob is proof that mindset and personal growth are not just buzzwords, but can be life-altering. With over 20 years of experience helping individuals, teams, and businesses grow, Rob's coaching style of meeting you where you are brings a clear, direct, and kind approach to personal development. Through his coaching and training, he helps others unlock their full potential and navigate tough conversations that most of us would like to avoid, like conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, and the power of human behavior. What I love most about Rob is how committed he is to helping others grow and how deeply he understands the importance of doing the work, shifting from reaction to intention, from silence to self-worth, and ultimately from surviving to leading. So today we're going to dive into everything, especially my favorite subject, which is the emotional and social intelligence. We're going to break down what they mean, why the power of choice is so important, and what it truly looks like to raise your lid. I am honored to have you here, my friend, and I cannot wait for everybody to learn more about you.
I'm honored to be here with you. You know how much I respect and I absolutely adore you. So it's a privilege to be on here with you today. I'm looking forward to this conversation and really impacting your listeners.
I cannot wait because we have had so many powerful conversations just over Zoom. Like every one of them, like we need to be recording this. So here we are.
I think both of us walk away from every interaction like we got a really good friendship kindred going.
Mm-hmm.
We also got a good mutual therapy session going. It's
Mm-hmm.
like multiple things that every conversation I walk away from you with, first of all, I feel phenomenal about.
Same.
And then also I'm like, man, did I learn so much from Kim just in that whatever we spend together, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever that is. It's always absolutely wonderful.
I feel the same way. I leave the conversation feeling lifted and like, okay, well, what am I going to do next? What can I do? How can I impact the world? Because you're doing so much and I just love it. All right, well, let me get into my first question. You know, I have multiple questions. Is there anything you want to add to that bio or that intro that I did that you want everybody to know?
Actually, I would love if you could travel with me everywhere and do that exact intro. That was phenomenal. That was phenomenal. I don't think I could do that on my own the way you did it. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Yes, I need you to travel with me in every event that I do. I need you to do the introduction.
I will hop on that stage and I will bring you out 100%.
I love it. Nothing to add. That was wonderful.
Great. All right. So my first question is the name of your business, the Raise Your Lid, with the emphasis on your in the title. To me, it suggests transformation. So like you're kind of like raising the bar in life. How did your mindset and beliefs before you started raising your lid impact your life, and what shifted for you to know that it was time to start raising your lid?
Well, it took me a long time, in fact, decades, to work through personal traumas, trials, tribulations, figuring things out on my own, maybe not using the resources around me. but eventually it came to mind to where, you know what? I really do need to establish not only core values, and core values are talked about a lot. However, core values that are absolutely non negotiable in any part of my life. So, my core values are courage, growth, and leadership.
Love it.
Everything I do, everything I am, everything I provide for others revolve around those core values. Now, there are other values that fit within there. However, these are the things that I don't deter from no matter who, no matter when, no matter how. And once I was able to do that, Kim, I was able to take my past and start to transition into, okay, this is how I am moving forward with respect and understanding of my past, but not ruminating on it. Here's what I want to do moving forward for myself and then pay it forward to others.
I love it. And you know what I love? I love that you start with courage because every single thing that you just said requires courage first.
And I'm, you know me, I'm a very intentional person.
Mhm.
Those are intentionally in that order
I love it.
because you're right, especially for somebody like myself or somebody like yourself with your story. Without the courage part, I don't, I'm really not sure on how far we would actually get to where we are today
Mhm.
if we didn't have that courage piece.
If without the courage, the fear takes over.
Well, the fear is always there. You
Mhm.
know, it's always gonna come up, but how much of it do we let direct us or control us?
Mhm.
And the more we instill courage and the more we build confidence around courage, that fear is always gonna be there, but it means very little to nothing to me anymore.
Mhm.
Really.
Isn't it funny how things
Yeah.
shift and you can go back to a time in your life, I'm sure, that fear was overwhelming, like you it was paralyzing.
It was my daily operating procedure.
Mhm.
Yeah. And, you know, when you also talked about Raise Your Lid Consulting,
Mhm.
we see out there, you know, there are a lot of programs and that sort of thing, but some of them, a lot of them are a little bit self absorbed. And here's my method for you.
Mhm.
I'm all about everybody else. I want to meet them where they're at truly
Mhm.
and help them with solution options for that. So that's why the Your and Raise Your Lid Consulting is in all caps. And then actually that name came from there's something called the indisputable laws of leadership. And the number one law is the law of the lid. Only you can put a lid on your potential.
Mhm. So true.
So when I came up with Raise Your Lid Consulting, I took that, and that comes from a gentleman named John Maxwell. And with John's number one law of leadership, the law of the lid, I took that and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to base my business in the way I serve others around. So that's how that came about.
I love it. I love a little John Maxwell myself.
Oh,
Who doesn't?
oh,
Who doesn't?
oh yeah.
Okay, so my next question is, you faced some bullying and image challenges, and challenges like these, which we have all probably encountered in some way or another, can shape our beliefs and our identity and ultimately how we live our life.
Mm.
So, how did those challenges shape your life
Yeah.
before?
Well, we all have options, we all have choices. Even if we think we don't have a choice, there's always a choice.
Mhm.
Choosing to do nothing is a choice. You and I have talked about this before.
Yep.
When it came to my trials and tribulations, you know, just to give you a little bit of the backstory on it so the listeners understand, I didn't even reach 5 foot tall until I was a senior in high school. I was 4'11" and 96 pounds.
Mhm.
You know, most people at that time in their lives, they're physically developing and that sort of thing. I was really behind the curve. So the things that I grew up with, a lot of the people pleasing and dealing with, you know, a difficult adult in my life and that sort of thing, it all fell into place to where I felt like I just have to be as likable as possible,
Mhm.
even when it's detrimental to me. And having that physical being behind physically, especially as a man growing up into a teen, those were very, very difficult times. So at that time, I believed my identity was as long as I do everything for everybody else the way they want it, they will like me, and maybe they'll ignore these other things about me that may not be, in my mind, as attractive or, enticing to people. Yeah, one
You
of the things that I know you deal with very well, and when you talk about trauma and stuff like that, is the mask we hide behind. And
mhm.
sometimes the mask is humor,
Yep.
sometimes the mask is like the nonsense of fake it till you make it type stuff.
Mhm.
But all those things, as they build and the longer they go on, the more detrimental they become, until you could really honestly shift your mindset.
And I believe in the choices, and I have always said there's never more than 2 choices. Either you do it or you don't do it. There's nothing in between. There's no gray area.
Yeah, and since you were addressing my story, I could have chosen the path of, you know what,
Mhm.
just stay in this really, really passive format of my life and just deal with it and let everything bury and bury and bury. And then one day something bad might happen, or it'll explode. Or I could really start to turn things around. And that's up to me how consistent I want to be, how disciplined I want to be. I know we live in a world of quick fixes.
Mhm.
These types of things aren't quick fixes. So if you're looking for a quick fix to suddenly change your mindset, um, that's not true.
No.
That's not the truth at all.
And I love when you said that in the beginning that it took you decades because
Decades,
it
and it's still work.
yeah, yeah,
It
it
it it
never
it's
ends.
it's you know what? It's gonna be a work in progress until I'm in the dirt,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So, yeah,
Absolutely, 100%, and I feel like we've touched on so many different things that I have questions for.
good.
But the one thing I wanna talk about too is that you mentioned that you had a traumatic brain injury,
Mm,
and would you be comfortable sharing the story with the listeners? And if
absolutely.
okay, and, can you, share, like, how that injury impacted your life both physically and mentally, and anything that you had to do to overcome those challenges? Because when you have the challenge of, the bullying and the people pleasing, that's completely different than having a physical challenge.
I
So if
I
you
I
could
l I love that you stated there's a difference, because there is. Sometimes people put those things together, and
yeah.
it's not necessarily the case. So in my case, um, I started martial arts, I really started martial arts to learn to run away from bullies.
Mm. Mhm.
I loved watching, like, the kung fu movies and stuff like that, so I always liked the techniques of martial arts, but really my goal was, how do I run from a bad situation and get away from it? So as my martial arts started to increase, and I increased not only interest but skill level, I thought, okay, I want to try this out to see if it actually works. So I actually became an amateur and then eventually a professional fighter. And this is where the traumatic brain injury comes into play.
Mm.
As a professional fighter, you there's a lot of concussive force in training and in competition, and that collects. That collects over time. If
Mhm.
you give it time to heal, chances are better. If you don't give it time to heal, it accumulates. So now athletes have, they have specific trainers, they have diets, they have back in the days when I was training and fighting and all that other stuff, it was just about go, go, go. So the constant trauma to my brain was continual.
Mhm.
What
Wow.
I started finding out, and this was, I had started competing in my early 20s. In my late 20s to early 30s, I actually started to notice some cognitive dysfunction.
Wow.
Where I was really, really able and skilled in the past, I was having a lot of trouble. Some of it was memory, some of it was recall, some of it was just daily function. And as I started to find that out, I started to do research and homework. And what I found was, at least for myself, and to this day, the way I keep my TBI, or traumatic brain injury, under control is continued learning.
Mhm.
If I go a period of time, like if I were to spend 2 weeks and just sit on the couch and do nothing, I could tell cognitively that I'll start to decline. However, here's where I learned to turn it around. Not only the more I learn specific things that are within my skills, my
Mhm.
abilities, and my passion, I'm actually a better student and a better learner than I ever have been from what I remember. And that's how I continue to keep my brain in a function to where those little things rarely come into play anymore.
That's amazing. And it's so powerful too, as far as, what they say about Alzheimer's and stuff like that, like, keep doing that Sudoku. You know,
Right.
don't stop. But I have a question about the fighting. Like, the first thing that came to my mind when you were explaining it was, well, first off, I love that about you. And the other thing I love about you is that you're a fellow heavy metal fan like myself. So, but do you think in some way that you did that go, go, go with the fighting because it gave you that little bit more power, a little bit more power, and a little bit more power? Like, the more you did, the more it built your confidence and gave you that power over the bullying, so that you
Ooh,
went almost extreme a little bit? That's the first thing that popped into my head when you were explaining it.
Kim, that's a great question. Actually, it was the opposite. It
Really?
wasn't about power over the bullying. It
Yeah.
was more about dispelling my fear around it.
Gotcha.
So most people when they go through either martial arts or anything and they decide to fight, a lot of it is for that power. I
Uh-huh.
want to I want to show that I'm strong. I want to show that this. Actually, I did fighting as an experiment. Were the things that I was learning through martial arts, do they actually work when you're in a full-on confrontation?
Mhm.
So a big part of that, instead of the power for me, was actually the ability to dispel the fear to where I didn't worry about that anymore.
That's awesome. I love it. Love it.
For most people, it is about the power.
Yeah.
For me, it was actually the opposite. It was just about getting rid of or dispelling the fear as much as possible.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right, what else do I have for you today? But let's talk about my favorite subject, emotional and social intelligence. And that is your area that has your heart, for
Yeah.
sure. Can you explain to the listeners like what they both mean? And are there any signs that show up in your life that could say, "Hey, you might need to work on that." those those areas of emotional and social intelligence.
Yeah. So there are two different things that work very well together. So I'll start with emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence comes really in four pieces, and I'll just give a quick explanation of this. If the listeners obviously want any more information, they could either look it up or contact me. But
Mhm,
really, the first part, and they work in order, they work in a progression. So without the first thing, the other things are very, very difficult to accomplish. The first is self-awareness.
mhm,
Basically, are you just aware of your emotions, and can you label them deeper than just happiness, sadness, like the basic emotional levels? Can you label them deeper, like resentment or, anything like that? Anything deep seated. So that's self awareness. And that's internal for yourself. The next part is also self, and that's self regulation or self management. This is how the emotions come out of you.
mhm.
Are you impulsive and blurt things out? Do you bury things inside? You know, do you let things build up and then all of a sudden explode? How do things come out of you? So that's the self regulation piece. So those are the two quadrants of emotional intelligence for the self. Then now it comes to others. The third quadrant in emotional intelligence is what we call social awareness. So again, it's an awareness, but awareness of others.
Mm,
Can you be openly aware of how others may be feeling? Do you have empathy? Do you have understanding, even if you don't agree with how they're acting or how they're emoting? It's not about agreement, it's about understanding. So can you understand the emotions of others? Can you recognize the emotions of others? And then the fourth quadrant is relationship management. Okay, now that I have these other things, I'm self-aware of my own emotions. I'm aware of how they come out of me. I'm also aware of others and how they're feeling, and I could show some empathy. Now, with relationship management, how do I take those abilities and I build relationships deeper from that? So that's the basis of emotional intelligence.
I
Is
mean,
that good enough?
that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, awareness is 90% of the solution.
So well, things have to start with either your awareness and or your thinking.
Mhm,
A lot of times we bypass those things to work on the other things. Oh, I need to be more empathetic. Okay, probably. However, how are you with yourself first?
mhm,
And many people skip that.
mhm.
And when you skip it, it's not impossible, but it's highly improbable that you're really going to build strong relationships with people if you don't have that self-awareness and the self-regulation in play.
I mean, and it's hard to look at yourself. Most
Sure.
people wanna skip that, and like, "I'm good." It's actually that person's fault.
It's
It's
the
not
worst.
me.
It's so easy. It's way easier to point fingers at others,
Mhm.
to say, well, it's because of them. Somebody made me mad. That's not
Mm,
true.
I
Nobody can make you mad. Only you can make you mad.
Mhm. That was the last episode I did.
Oh, perfect. Well, you know I have a lot of catching up on your episodes and that sort of thing. I'm loving them so far, but I have some catching up. Yeah, so that's emotional intelligence in a nutshell.
Yeah. It
Okay,
really it Yeah, go ahead.
no, please.
No, you first. This is you.
Okay. Now, social intelligence. When you have high levels of emotional intelligence, now this is where social intelligence really comes into play. Are you aware of your behaviors in social situations? Whether it's one on one, whether it's a small group, big group, whether you're at a conference, a show, when you're in a group, you're out at the bar having drinks. How are you socially? And also, how are you in recognition of others socially? So now we take all those emotional intelligence skills and now we put it in a bigger format. And emotional intelligence, it gets talked about a lot now.
Yes.
Anytime I mention social intelligence to people, most people have no idea that it even exists. And I'm actually doing more and more speaking events on social intelligence specifically because there's also high and low levels of social intelligence. Indications of a high level would be like, are you a truly good listener?
Mhm.
You know, do you allow people to finish their points? Um, are you aware of the emotion in the room or the vibe of the room? Low levels of social intelligence are you self absorbed? Do you make everything everybody says about you and turn it around about you?
Mm.
Are you an interrupter? Which that seems to be a common thing with a lot of people. But there are levels, high indications and low indications of where your social intelligence is. Also with emotional intelligence too. There's indications as well.
Well, for people who can't see me, I raised my hand at the interrupter because I am definitely an interrupter, and that is the, classic, you always have something to work on.
That's just
And
it.
the self-awareness that you are an interrupter is what's important.
That's where it starts.
Yes.
That's where everything starts with the self.
That was a great explanation, and even in our last meeting, that was one of the questions. I'm like, "All right, emotional intelligence, we've talked about it, but explain the social intelligence." And I love that because that is true, like how you present yourself in a party or in a group or how you react or, all of those things. I love it.
Yeah.
We could talk about this stuff for hours. What else do I have?
I can't wait. This is fantastic so far. Your
Is
questions were so
isn't it
good.
fun? Huh?
This is very fun.
I get the questions what you tell me in that sheet.
Mm,
So
love it.
that's how the questions are sorted out. Wish I could remember them and not have to look at a piece of paper, but that's never gonna happen, especially not at 56.
Well, memorization's a little bit overrated too.
Oh,
It
good.
becomes it also becomes inauthentic. Kind of like when you have AI do all your homework.
Right, right.
Nah,
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna go back to the people pleasing a little bit.
Mm.
You went from people pleasing and a passive mindset to one that's assertive and proactive. Can you recall a time when shifting that from reactive to proactive changed the outcome of a situation for you, either personally or professionally? Like an example of how that showed up and played out.
Yeah, there are a lot of examples of it. If you want a direct life example from me, it would be something to where in dealing with a difficult family member,
Hmm.
finally having the true difficult conversation and being able to say no to certain things, or even more importantly, establishing solid boundaries that I'm also going to enforce.
Hmm.
Not just saying it, but actually doing it.
Hmm.
So in my passive world, it would have been, something along the lines of, well, you know what? I just really like you to respect my time. And then I let it happen, let it happen. In my more assertive to even aggressive way, it was, I need you to respect my time. I'm not going to take your phone calls at 2 in the morning
Hmm.
type of thing. And I made sure that I did it. When that phone rang at 2 a.m., no answer. You're not going to get me. So that was a major turning point. However, I do need to share with everybody that at first I over adjusted. I
Hmm.
went from passive to aggressive.
Hmm.
I went from never saying no to saying no to everything. Or I went from, always allowing this to never allowing this. And I quickly learned, when people are on extremes one way or the other, that's not healthy either way. The harmony is always somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
So what I had to find is assertiveness falls in the middle of passive and aggressive. So where was my level of assertiveness? Sometimes it needed to be a bit more aggressive. Sometimes it needed to be a bit more passive, but could I stay in that sweet harmony range? And going through those direct examples, whether it was a family member or somebody I was doing business with, a customer, you know, being a little bit overwhelming and a little bit pushy and that sort of thing. How do I establish those things? Once I turned from passive, I made the mistake of being over aggressive.
Hmm.
And then I was able to find the harmony with being assertive. That's when it turned the corner. And that started to happen in my early 20s, which was also the time that I started to fulfill my body. I started to build confidence. I started to build some real self worth and not telling myself false stories anymore. And that just grew, but it only grew because I was very disciplined, consistent, and unwavering in working toward that. I could
Hmm.
have given up on it at any time.
I feel like when you do learn a new skill set, like the boundaries, the pendulum does swing really hard in the beginning to the opposite side. It's like as you're learning, you don't know how to tolerate that harmony because it's still too risky for you to fall back into the passive. That's how I see it. So that the pendulum has to swing all the way over, or you can't do it. And then as you get good, you can find that word, which I love that you use that harmony
Yeah.
word. And can you explain why you use the word harmony? We talked about that the last time that
Yeah.
we talked, and I loved it. I love that.
Well, this is where when we see out there, we see things like work life balance.
Mm,
We see the word balance all the time. When you look at what balance really means, it means like perfectly level. That's a very, very stressful thing. And when I tell people it's a stressful word, it resonates with them right away, but they never thought of it that way. Balance is very, very hard. And you know what? It's not realistic.
mhm,
Nothing is ever going to be perfectly equal. Sometimes you're going to work harder than you play. Sometimes you're going to play harder than you work. Sometimes you're going to work on your personal relationships more than your business relationships. There's really not going to be a time to where it's even. That shouldn't be the goal.
mhm.
The goal should be is recognizing the harmony in it and then making adjustments within.
I love it. I love the word harmony. And when you
Yeah.
explained that to me the last time, that is perfect. And the balance did resonate with me because it is impossible to do, and that word is being thrown around everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Work-life balance, work-life balance, work-life balance, and it's not
Mm-mm.
not realistic at all. I love that.
And then the people that have poor self-talk, they
Mhm.
start to blame themselves for not having balance.
Right, right,
No, 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 no. It doesn't work that way.
right.
But you get sold that term. If you get sold on a term enough, you're gonna start to believe it or believe in it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
100%.
nonsense.
Yeah. Alright, so next I wanna talk about a subject that you love, which most people hate, which is conflict resolution, and you have told me many times how much you love conflict, you welcome conflict, and it is tough for a lot of people. It is not easy to do. So, how has your understanding of conflict changed the way you approach it today versus how you might have handled it years ago?
Woo, great question.
Mm,
The short answer is my ability and skill level in self-regulation, how it comes out of me.
mhm,
In the past, conflict would have been when I was a kid, I cried a lot.
mhm,
When I was a young to younger adult, I got angry
mhm,
and I would either blast out or I would completely internalize on extreme levels, one way or the other. As I built skill, I realize, and fighting and competing, that plays a part in it. That's a type of conflict. But here's what I've learned, Kim, that I actually share in all my classes on conflict resolution. Conflict can actually be a very, very healthy thing because when we get the most uncomfortable things in our lives ironed out, things go well.
mhm,
Now, during that time, it's scary. You shit your pants. You're
mhm,
like, ooh, I don't know how they're going to react. You have all these procrastination things within you on why not to deal with it. But I always encourage people this, and I show this on one of my slides in my presentation. I said, you could either look at conflict as a bridge to build stronger relationships, or you could look at it as a pit
mhm,
to where you just stay deep in it. Either you avoid it or your self-regulation is poor and you blast out, you hate on people, you're dead to me, all those crazy things around it. And none of those in the pit are healthy. The bridge is where the health is. If you could just view conflict as a bridge, even in the toughest times, you have a better chance of working through it and eventually building skill around it. That's why I love it so much.
So, do you have any advice for like a lot of our listeners who have been through trauma? And I'll speak from my own experience of addressing conflict for people or for myself at times in my life was scary because, when you did that when you were younger or whatever, it didn't turn out so good. So, how do you address or you know tell the listeners who have had that kind of experience in their life what they
Mm,
can do to help them in that situation?
yeah, that's a great question. This could be an extensive conversation on its own. However, I've got a way of making it very brief and understandable for everybody.
Mhm. That's what I
So
love about
here's the deal. A lot of that fear also comes from overwhelm around the big picture,
it.
the
Mhm,
whole scenario. Here's what I encourage people to do just to get started. Have a small, difficult conversation and get a small win. Make sure, and this is where I had challenges too. I never celebrated my wins
mhm,
early on. I just went through them and said, okay, on to the next. So start small, small, difficult conversation, gain a win, build on that confidence, celebrate it, and then move on to something just a challenge, a bit more challenging. As you start to build those wins, the confidence comes with it. The self-esteem raises. It would be very irresponsible of me to say, you know what, just find somebody you have a conflict with and just have the conversation.
mhm, mhm,
Not so much. However, you could have a part of that conversation and start to dip your toe into it. So, for example, Kim, let's just say you were very verbally abusive to me. Instead of me going all in and saying, Kim, you're very verbal abusive to me, I could start with one of your small behaviors.
Mhm.
Kim, I'm very uncomfortable when you call me a jerk. I'd like to talk about just that part with you
Mhm.
and start there. And maybe we come to an agreement. You said, you know what, Rob? Okay, I'll do my best not to call you a jerk anymore. So small win,
Mhm.
little confidence is built. Now we could get into a little bit of the bigger things, but steps at a time. That's my response to your question.
Super
Small
helpful.
steps, small wins.
I
I
think
hope
that's
that helps.
yeah, it's really helpful. And, I always say if you can find that person too that you feel safe with to have that little conversation with, that will even feel a little bit better. You'll be like, "Oh, I know the second you have like a hard conversation with somebody, the relief you have afterwards is is so much better than the buildup of having the conversation, right? You build it up in your head that it's going to be this terrible, terrible, terrible thing, and then you walk away and you're like, that actually wasn't so bad.
I'll say this a lot of the time. However, the one thing that will cause it either way to go really well or really poorly is what I tell people your approach.
Hmm.
It depends on how you approach it. Most people that walk away and say, you know what, that actually didn't go bad or as bad as I thought it was going to be, chances are they had a really solid approach to it. The people that walk away from those situations and go, I knew that was going to be terrible. It was as bad or worse than I thought. Chances are it was their approach.
Hmm.
So, approach is massively important when it comes to dealing with conflict. It's massively important.
And do you think a piece of emotional intelligence is also if you're able to walk away without the resolution? Somebody who can't, you know, um, have a conflict with you, but then you can walk away and you're okay with that.
It's partially an emotional intelligence thing, it's more of a boundaries thing. Are you okay with, you know what, Kim? Instead of talking to you weekly, I'm just going to talk to you monthly. Now, if it's a coworker that you have to work with every day, there are certain challenges depending on the situation, but you're right. Sometimes it's the idea is to build relationships.
Hmm.
However, it's also totally okay to diminish or eliminate relationships. There's health in both of those. Now, you don't want to be on an extreme. As soon as somebody makes you mad, you say, okay, you're dead to me. I'm never talking to you again. And you don't want to do cowardly things like ghost people. You don't want to take cowardly acts,
Hmm.
you know. But if it's something to where you need to diminish or eliminate the relationship, you can also do that too. And that could be a healthy choice. Or you could decide, I want to build on this.
Such a great conversation. This is why our Zooms last 2 hours, and we should have been recording all of them. All right. So, one thing I'm going to say, and you talked about it a little bit already about emotions and how you used to stuff them down. I feel like emotions can be more challenging for men because they have been told to be strong, to not show their emotions, to keep it together. So it can make it really hard for them to express their emotions or even admit that they do need to change. So, from your perspective, what do you wish men knew about the power of mindset and emotional and personal growth from a male point of view? Speaking to the male listeners.
Yeah, that's a really good point because there are massive differences in not in the emotions themselves,
Mhm,
but how they're dealt with for
mhm,
sure.
definitely.
So from a male perspective to any male listeners, even female listeners that
Mhm,
want to know more about it, I go back to small steps, small wins. So with that, if you're not open about, let's say, crying with friends, openly crying and that sort of thing, at least share the emotions you're having and get it out of you.
mhm,
Or do things like, for males, if they feel like, if a lot of it's around weakness.
mhm,
If I show emotion in a different way, I'm going to look at it as weak. One of the other things you could do is you could either record yourself, you could journal,
mhm.
but get the emotions out of you somehow. whether it's through writing, whether it's through recording, whether it's just through screaming for a minute in the bathroom by yourself, whatever that is, getting it out of you is a big part. However, that's that's one piece that could keep you stuck there. I strongly encourage to just explore in little ways the right times and finding the right people to
Mhm.
be a little more openly emotive.
Mhm.
And eventually it becomes very healthy. Of course, nobody wants to go on extremes of it to where now you're a bawling mess in front of everybody all the time.
Mhm.
And here's where people get really, it's encouraged and it's extremely not helpful and unhealthy. They do what I call emotionally broadcast.
Mhm.
I'm going to go on Facebook and let the world know what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. Hopefully, that millions of people that I don't know, that don't know me, that don't care about me, will give me their advice on what they think I should do. Terrible idea. Terrible idea.
Terrible idea.
But but for men especially, small steps, small wins.
Yeah.
Get the emotion out of you somehow, some way, whether it's with a person or a journal or something like that, and then start to find those people in your life. And you mentioned safe earlier. Find somebody that you could be a little more vulnerable with. Vulnerability on the internet is not vulnerability. That's emotional broadcasting. Vulnerability is between you and I privately, Kim.
Mhm. Yep.
You know what, Kim? I really want to share this with you. I'm feeling this way. I need to discuss this. I just need you to hear me. That's true vulnerability. But vulnerability is all it should be earned. It's not something you could just pick the person off the street and go, "Hey, you know what? I've been feeling really down." I No, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no. Right.
Imagine if we all did that.
Right. Well, and for males especially,
Yeah.
it's hard enough to do with
Mhm.
the people that we know, trust, and love. That's why you make a good point about the difference. For females, it's not as daunting
Mhm.
in that context. But for males, yeah, if we could just take those little steps and find a way to release it first healthy in a healthy way and then build from there.
Alright, that's awesome, and I do feel that it's more acceptable for females to show their emotions more than men. Is there, any helpful hints for men to start naming their emotions? Like, even understanding, if, anger comes out or whatever, like, helping get to the root of that anger or helping to change it a little bit so it's not so explosive and what are your thoughts on that? Because I don't know the male perspective on that stuff.
Yeah, when you and really this works both ways, but for males especially, ask yourself what and why questions around the surface emotion that you're talking about.
Mhm,
So when it comes to anger, you would say, what is it that's actually making me angry? Or why am I really feeling anger? And if you could start to answer those questions and get a little bit deeper and continue the why and what around it, you'll get down to it and say, you know what, it's really not anger I'm feeling, it's disappointment I'm
mhm,
feeling. Or it could be I feel like resentment is building. Now those are things you could actually build upon.
mhm,
When you stay in the surface emotions, especially for males, it just remains there.
mhm.
Oh, I was just pissed off.
Yeah.
Or, that actually made me really sad. Staying there, it doesn't help anything moving forward. What was it that made me sad? Why am I sad? What
Mhm.
are the contributing factors? Now we get somewhere.
And those are some great journal prompts, like,
Yeah.
to sit down. Those are great journal prompts. Why I always say, like, you gotta get to the root of it because it's never what you think.
No,
The anger piece is usually, for me, I noticed it was a lot of sadness. Like, anytime there was anger, it was a cover up for sadness because sadness was hard.
yeah. And when emotions pop up in us, there's an event, something happens,
Mhm,
and then there's the emotion.
mhm,
Those are the things we don't control. Whatever pops in, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whatever, those general things, we don't have control over that. However, if we could have awareness and response time before we react or respond, this is where, okay, now we could think about this a little bit deeper. Once we could do that, now we could formulate appropriate responses and deal with it on a better level. but the event and the emotion, those are things that happen naturally within us that we have no control over. But if we let those things be the controller, that's what
We're
it's going to
stuck.
be.
Yeah, then we're
Yeah.
stuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. That's my next question.
Well, ask away if
We
we didn't
went
answer
right
it.
we went right into it. It was great. So, if somebody is listening right now and they feel stuck, what is one truth that you've learned about yourself that you would like them to take away with them today?
Don't go at it alone.
Ding, ding,
Don't
ding,
go
ding,
at
ding,
it
ding,
alone.
ding. Mm,
Yeah.
that gave me
There-
goosebumps.
there's plenty of resources out there, whether it's books, podcasts like yours, people that listen to your podcast. I'm sure they come out of it, and there's a lot of value around that. Or you find somebody supportive, and I dare to go a bit further and say, find somebody who's equipped for the support you're looking for.
Mhm,
It's good to tell your best friend or your sister or, somebody in your life about your things and that sort of thing. But if you're really looking to make progress, find a qualified resource that could really help you through the things that you need help with.
mm.
Don't go at it alone.
I love the people in my life that challenge me. When
Hmm.
I say something and somebody goes, "No, no, 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 no," I'll challenge you on that, and I love when it makes me look at things in a different way.
Every year I come up with a few words
Yeah.
that are like my focus for the year. And actually over the last 2 years, I kept one of the same words,
Mhm,
and that's perspective.
mhm,
I want to learn and be open to as many perspectives as possible. Whether I agree with them or not,
mhm.
it doesn't matter. I just want to be open to perspective. So that's one of the things that addresses your question too. You
It's
know, be
it's
open to perspective.
absolutely 100%, and you kind of answered the question a little bit then my next question, but I do you have something, a book, a podcast, a practice, a resource that you love that's helped you that could help somebody start shifting their beliefs and their mindset today? So do you have a favorite podcast, a book that you are like, you know what, that book changed my life. Without that book, I wouldn't have done this, this, or this. Anything like that for somebody.
Whew. You know me, I'm such a researcher. I'm such a nerd. There are so many resources. Well, let's start with the Survivor's Chair podcast. Let's
Aw,
start there.
thanks for the
Um,
plug.
but when it comes to podcasts and that sort of thing, just a couple that come to top of mind are things like Mel Robbins' podcast,
Mhm,
Jefferson Fisher's podcast. Those are a couple of the podcasts that are really honed in, down to earth, like
mhm.
super
Yeah,
simple. They take the sciencey stuff, which is what I try to do. I try to take the sciencey stuff and make it relatable and implementable.
yep.
Those are a couple podcasts. As far as books, actually, for anybody that goes on my website, I actually have my live reading list that as I start to read books and add books, it's a live reading list, and I have it by category, mindset, leadership, anything
Ooh,
like that. You could access that 24 hours a day. And there are just, there's way too many books for me to pick any. However, if I were to pick one,
mhm.
it would be the book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck.
Favorites.
Out
Oh
of,
my gosh, it's one of my
I,
favorites.
out of the most impactful books in my
Mhm,
life, that's definite. It's definitely within my top 10, maybe
mhm.
even within my top 5. So Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck.
Such a great book, and to understand the difference between a fixed mindset and a
Oh,
growth mindset, and yet and at the same time, understanding that we have a little bit of both in us at all times. So
yeah, at all times in different situations.
yeah.
I think people also, Kim, people get wrapped up in black and white. It's
Yes.
either this or it's this. And we talked about this a lot. Harmony is in the middle.
Mhm,
It doesn't have to be black and white. It's not that you have a fixed mindset about everything and a growth mindset about everything. No, there might, maybe in my personal life, I have a little more of a fixed mindset, or
mhm.
with this person, I have a little bit more of a growth mindset. So emotional and social intelligence work the same way. There's levels to it all, and sometimes it's situational or environmental.
Do you wanna explain a little bit what a fixed and growth mindset is for the people who have never heard that book or those sayings before?
Sure. I'll do my best to give a short excerpt on it.
I bet you'll.
So fixed mindset. This is people that say, well, this is just who I am.
Mm.
I'm dumb. I can't learn anymore. I've gotten to this level. I can't go any further. Basically, you take things that you believe are instilled in you, and that's as far as you can go. That's a fixed mindset.
Mhm.
A growth mindset says, I still have the ability to learn. I still have the ability to adapt. I still have the ability to do something more than I'm currently doing, even if sometimes it doesn't work, even if sometimes it's not the right thing for me. I still can take and adapt the things within my life, no matter where I'm at. Traumatic brain injury, deep trauma like yourself.
Mhm.
The growth mindset says there's still a way through, around, or out of this. And I have the ability to find that. So those are
Perfect.
what would you think about that?
Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Because that is one of my favorite books.
Oh,
Life
yeah,
altering book for sure.
yeah.
Um, all right. Well, that's all my questions I have for today. First off, can you just give your website real quick so people, I'm going to put it in the show notes, everything, but
Thank
just so people who are listening.
Yes, thank you for that. My website is coachingforsmallbusinesses.com.
Awesome.
That's my website. Has all my information on there. You could also find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Rob Hinds, Raise Your Lid Consulting, but coachingforsmallbusinesses.com is my website.
And you do work with individuals, with businesses in the salon industry, out of the salon industry. You do a lot for your Chamber of Commerce,
Mhm.
a lot of speaking events. You're everywhere. I just love it. And I always like to point out how I meet people, which I think is
Yeah.
really important. And I, really want to emphasize the importance of networking and putting yourself out there. And I don't remember which one of us messaged the other one first. I don't remember that.
Mm-mm.
But that it all started on Instagram. Just to like, hey, I want to know more about what you're doing or what you're about. And it has blossomed into this just amazing friendship that I'm so grateful to have. So
Me
grateful.
too. And I think that's encouragement for everybody, your listeners, and really everybody, is that just the, just those little networking pieces and that sort of thing, or people that you feel maybe share the same values, maybe don't share the same values, but it's good to be curious. It's
Hmm.
good to be curious and ask questions and reach out. It doesn't mean you have to do that with everybody, but when something really sparks you,
Hmm.
why not?
Why not?
When I wanted to learn more about conflict, I actually went to FBI hostage negotiators and said, "Hey, I want to learn, because who better in conflict, soldiers that like go to the sources that know the most about this
Hmm.
and see what you can gather."
That's amazing. I love that story. I don't know if I would be so quick to be like, hey, FBI negotiator, can you? That's awesome. Oh my gosh. All right. So I can't thank you enough for being here today. And to the listeners out there, um, if you feel stuck, I hope Rob's story offers you a reminder that there is always another way. That mindset isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about being honest enough to ask, what baggage and beliefs am I carrying and what do I want to change? Rob's journey is proof to all of us that self awareness, emotional intelligence, and courageous honesty can change everything. So, we touched on where people can find you and what are some of the ways that people can work with you.
So to work with me, all of my information, everything's on my website, everything I do. You could also, if you want to see what I do and how I do it and who I do it with, I'm very open with that on my Instagram, my LinkedIn, and my Facebook page. My business Facebook page is Raise Your Lid Consulting. My LinkedIn is Rob Hinds, Raise Your Lid Consulting. And then my Instagram is at rob.raiseyourlidconsulting. So if you look on any of those, you could see a lot of the people I've worked with. There's testimonials on there. If you want to know more about my actual business and what I do and how I do it, that would be through my website.
That's so awesome. I cannot wait to get on your website and look at that book list. Are you kidding? That's a great idea. We should swap book lists.
And for all of you out there, whether you look me up or do anything or not, just look at my reading list.
Mhm.
And there might be something in there that sparks you that says, "Hey, I want to know a little bit more about this." Go after it. Go after it. Yeah.
And I think you're a lot like me in a sense that, even if you look at your website and your Instagram and it doesn't feel like it's the right fit for somebody, to still reach out because there might be somebody that you know or that you can get in touch with that would be a good fit for somebody, because
Yeah.
it is all about that working together and, just getting the help that people need is more important than, work with me, work with me kind of thing. We both
And
feel
and
that way.
that and that's just it too. It depends on the person and how they sell their business.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
very I'm very open about it. I actually have a list of resources
Mhm.
that, a lot of times I'll do a consultation with somebody and I know I'm not the right fit or not the right fit at the moment,
Yep,
and I'll
yep.
share that with them and I'll say, "Here's something or here's a podcast or here's somebody you could reach out to in the meantime that might be more of a value or a benefit for you at this point."
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
both think the same when it comes to that. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank
We
you.
didn't go 2 hours, which is amazing. Thank you for sharing your story with all of the listeners. And as always, to the listeners, thank you for showing up and thank you for listening and thank you for your support. And we will see you the next time on the Survivor's Chair.
It's an honor and a privilege. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Rob.
All right.
Thank you for tuning into the Survivor's Chair podcast. You can head over to my website, www.kimrussellpro.com. That's KIMRUSSELLPRO.com. You can catch up on my blogs. Follow me on social, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or TikTok. All the links will be in the show notes, and I'll see you next time in the Survivor's Chair.